So maybe I will put my more boring, ordinary background up and start on tonight's program. Actually, being in Uganda is appropriate to the theme of our time together this week because Christian is returning to his roots. He was born and raised most of his childhood in Uganda. He had a short time in Kenya as a young child. His Ugandan farming roots provided a love of the land and its cycles of planting, harvest, rainy seasons, and a time for storytelling. Living near the equator meant that the days were about 12 years long all year, and he learned to tell time by the constant year-round movement of the sun. Although I think even at 2 a.m. the sun is not going to be shining there. He was in his third year of high school in Uganda, doing well and studying science with the goal of being either an engineer or a doctor, when a visitor to his 900-student school made an offer that eventually changed the direction of his life. A board member from Olney Friends School asked the principal to select a student to attend Olney for a year, and Christian started a new adventure. He arrived in the United States at Olney School, was welcomed warmly, grew to love the school and to find new directions, and changed what he thought he was going to do. He stayed in the US to study Western civilization at St. John's College, then did his graduate work in international affairs and economics at Georgetown University. Since then, he has a fascinating history of work and service, working for the Sudan-Uganda program of the Lutheran World Federation Department for World Service, working at UNICEF, at the National Academy of Sciences in Washington, D.C., at Quest University in Canada, and just before he came back to Olney as executive secretary of the Uganda National Academy of Sciences. A wide range of interesting places and positions and interests and directions. In 2018, he returned to Olney as its head, fulfilling a prophecy that I just learned about yesterday that former head Ken Jacobson had made to him as a student many years ago, that someday he would be head of Olney Friends School, and here he is. Those of you who heard him speak about Olney in the panel presentation yesterday got a sense of his enthusiasm, dedication, energy, love, and wisdom. He leads and helps nourish the school, its students, and its staff to meet each person where he or she is, to cherish and sustain the resources of the earth, to grow spiritually and academically, and to live out the values and testimonies of Quakers in every aspect of the school. I'm happy to welcome Christian to our gathering tonight to explore with us what lies within this tree with many roots. We will gather together now in silence, and Christian will speak out of that silence when he is led. There will be time at the end of his talk for questions and discussions with him. Thank you very much, Christian. It's a joy to have you here with us. We will now settle into silence.
Good evening, friends. Good morning from here in Kampala, Uganda. I'm so grateful to the Lake Erie Yearly meeting and to the program committee as well for inviting me to be the keynote speaker at this year's annual sessions. It definitely came as a surprise to me, but when I received the invitation, uh, my whole being said yes. There wasn't even an ounce of doubt in me about participating in the annual sessions this way. And so then after saying yes, I said, what's going to happen? How am I actually going to be able to communicate with this yearly meeting? I know the Ohio Yearly Meeting of Friends to some extent, and I still need to learn it some more. How am I going to actually meet with minds and hearts at the Lake Erie Yearly meeting? But Greg Mott settled me down and just said, you're going to be able to do it. And I took it on faith. And I also spoke with Ken Jacobson, who said the same thing. And over those past few months, I've been really trying to discern what kind of message to give, and the message to give from a person who is not a specialist on trees, on roots, on anything that I would consider spirituality, really someone who is on the journey trying to learn along with other human beings. And that is really where I'm going to come from this evening with you. And so please do bear with me if you say, but we are not getting a specialist perspective on this issue. And, I abandoned trying to be a specialist in anything largely because of my association with Quakers and with Olney Friends School, and learning that it was okay to search and to have questions of all sorts, as long as that search was actually honest and intriguing enough, and bringing you to a place where you became a better human being, a better friend, a better global citizen, a person in service of others as honestly as possible. So that's where I'll be coming from today. And in case you can't hear me for one reason or another, just kindly put it in the chat to me, or just speak it out. The Wi-Fi in Uganda is not always reliable, but I made sure I had at least 2 backup systems in case the power goes out, or in case one service provider fails to give me the Wi-Fi I need, another one will kick in. They use separate masts to do that. And so there we are with those logistics. But to begin, as we go on, we'll ask questions, we'll have answers, and we'll explore together. And I do invite you to do that, because I'm just going to make a few broad points, and you'll see those broad points even in the write-up that I'll submit to the program committee in about a week's time on this incredible issue. So then we start. Why did I say what is within this tree of many roots? For sure, I knew about the many roots as an instinct of diversity, but also from the, just knowing a little bit about plants and trees, knowing that, you can have a tree with so many roots, and even if it's those roots at the very top there that will sip the water and nutrients, you have to give that tree space to grow, and it can have so many roots and do so many amazing things, and can also do those roots can do a lot of damage at the same time. So it's a bit of a balance there. And from there I say, but what lies with it? And that is that question that I've always wondered about. And you can always see a tree, if it's dying, there's always some core within it. And I'm thinking, what sustains that core? And as I promised in the announcement about the few poems and prayers and other things, stories, one of those first poems that comes to mind is one by Ken Jacobson on finding your center. And I won't read it all day, but real crux here is about, choose wisely what will be at your center. If you choose hate, that will be at your center. You choose love, that will be at your center. Choose understanding, that will be at your center. The message I take from that poem is really the message of agency, that you can choose what drives you, what is at your core, and in many ways, what is within you. And what is within you many times, what you'll put out in that world. And many of us do forget that we have that sense of agency, that agency where we can choose to do certain things. And it takes me back now to, hearing Maya Angelou over and over again. And it seems like every time I think I've understood Maya Angelou, there's a new lesson. And that one for me is about, doing right. You can always choose to do right. You can always choose to be a positive influence in others' lives. You can always choose to tread lightly in others' lives. And these all sound like such simple things, yet we find them over and over again, different manifestations of how difficult it is to live out these simple things. The Quaker testimonies, it becomes so difficult sometimes that, we have to go to war for some reason. We have to subjugate others to our commands. We have to perpetuate, historical power imbalances. And so it's really that pause, that tending to what is within. In there, for me, over these past few years, I've always come back, no matter what. People ask me, Christian, are you a Quaker? And I say, it depends on what you mean. Am I a Quaker? I'm not a birthright Quaker, but do I consider myself one? Absolutely. And I'm for sure a Quaker educator. Why? Because when I look at Quakerism and all the spices, what they all point to, the unifying thing, I've had people say, here is the greatest testimony. Say, no, there's nothing like that. If you have a testimony on equality, there's nothing like the greatest testimony. They all stand together, but what they do together is so powerful in its simplicity and elegance that it ignites that core that will lead from a place of love, from a place of understanding, from a place of, even if it's inconvenient, of doing that right thing, of listening to that inner voice, of taking a moment to discern what is before you take a drastic decision that you cannot really walk away from, of making that conscious effort to say, even if someone doesn't look like me, doesn't speak like me, doesn't dress like me, does not approach life like me, that person in many ways is me and is like me in so many ways that I can only begin to imagine. And why don't I go and explore that kind of multiplicity of our voices, multiplicity of the way we manifest our beings. And I've come around over and over again to see that courage, there's a lot of courage in having the simple spices, the simple testimonies, and it's very easy to brush them aside, but to really hold them and hold tight to them and keep them, it takes a bit of courage. It takes not a bit, a lot of courage. It takes that tending to the inside of that tree. And if we even expand the tree, you mean all of us globally, so all the roots we contribute, there's something inside. What do we want to see? Because surely we do not want to see a world where future generations go extinct. We don't want to do that. That is self-sabotage. That's our future. Those are our generations. Those are our offspring. When I think about my children, do I want to leave a world better than the way I found it? Absolutely. But how do I do it? There are some inconveniences that in the moment seem like it, but when I look at it in the long term, they will be positive? Absolutely. Have I ever viewed that having a peaceful existence with others will always be easy? Absolutely not, won't be easy. So it's always that reminder of it's tough, and you approach it with a sense of humility and a sense of gratitude that you have that opportunity to make that choice, to do right by others, to do good by others, and keep going, because that's exactly all you can do to clear up what is at that center, no matter what is on the outside. What's at the center will always drive on, will always be that legacy that you leave behind, and also what you model. And so always I talk about what is within your heart, always. And this is why I picked it up from Martin Luther King Jr. in Unfulfilled Dreams. It's like, what is within your heart? If it is in your heart to do good, to do right, then it is well that it is so, and that you've made that choice. Do not try to beat yourself up that you have not manifested all these other things you wanted to do. Why? Because you've done what is within your heart already, and that's where it all starts. When I look back at all the love that has been given to me over the years, over these past 2.5 decades and all, I think, who am I to be deserving of all that outpouring of love from people who didn't know me, from Quakers in Ohio, in rural Ohio, who didn't know me. And I say, well, there we go. When I look at my life many years later, I say, this is exactly what I was preparing myself for all along, was to come back and be able to give that which I received aplenty to others, and to students, to faculty, because there is no one I meet who doesn't have some form of story. For some reason, with Quakerism, you meet people with so many stories about what brought them, what drew them to a Quaker community, what drew them to Quakerism, those who are not birthright Quakers, those who are, what has kept them there going. Every time you go beneath the surface, underneath you will find that rich story that joins us all together. And you know what? That is the story of certainly what makes us human beings, but it's also a story of untold joys. It's a story of untold sufferings. It is a story of untold motivations, a story of untold findings as well. And so when you meet all these human beings coming together within the broad Quaker community, and I say broad because not everyone has to be registered to subscribe to the testimonies, and not everyone has to be registered a Quaker to live the testimonies, to live and breathe those testimonies. Every time you look at it, you say, wow, this is incredible, that unifying thing within all of us that will say, let's do good. And I remain optimistic that in the end, in the final analysis, we are going to find ourselves in a much better place, no matter what those who are loud and those who choose to be flippant, those who choose to place a sort of otherness on other people and view them as not part of themselves intrinsically. I remain optimistic that at the end of the day, the positivity is what's going to keep this world going. The efforts on this stewardship front, be it environmental, be it making sure that you can actually meet a human being and say you are a fellow human being, and not put all sorts of labels on them. On this one, I will pause, because I've been exploring recently with someone in a women's advocacy group who says, well, here women are not corrupt. Women are the best leaders. Women are the best nourishers and all that. And someone in that same group said, wait a minute. When we set up all those categories, and we dehumanizing a woman, because isn't it okay for a woman to be just that, another human being? Because if you set it up as best leader, not corrupt, the very first person to be corrupt say all women are corrupt. And yet these are human beings. Why not give them that breathing room to be just that, human beings? And it just came here, just straight to my heart, straight to my mind. And now I understand why my wife Vivian says, Christian, I'm at home in Barnesville. I couldn't understand it for a while because I thought here is a really Ugandan, rooted in Uganda and all. Little did I know, after all the years, we've been great friends since the second grade. All these years, I didn't know, really consciously understand that there was an oppressive environment in Uganda because it didn't oppress me. It oppressed her. It didn't matter how many degrees she had or how senior she was, there was always some form of othering, some form of perfection expected, some form of duty expected that even for me was not expected in that same way, or not shunned upon if I didn't fulfill that plan. So think about all those things and saying, well, look here, and now I understand. And so you have many of these other roots you can say are in Uganda, but guess what? You are developing another one in Barnesville, and that is nourishing. And why not? Why not support that growth too? Because again, love has to liberate. Love doesn't constrain, it liberates. And if it's at your core, you say, please grow. And in my readings over the past few months, fascinating readings on trees, saying that if you really know something about trees, you need to give them their space to grow out and to have those many roots that can go far out. You give them their breathing room, and then you'll see the kind of magic that they will create. So in that story, I told that experience with Vivian, my wife, and with this other advocate, trying to really do positive, do well, but say, let us unmask some of these sayings. Let's unmask and say, what are we looking at? We are looking at what it takes to be a human being without being oppressed, without oppressing others, and also very clearly saying, I may not get it right all the time, but I am trying. That is what is within my heart. So that is part one of this night's keynote exploration of the issue of many roots, one tree. When we are in tomorrow's workshop on inclusion, I'll dive deeper into the issue of inclusion. So these are broad points, but I really felt like I had to share them with you this evening. So that's part one that we are done with. Part number two, you think about how we now associate with other cultures, right? And it's so easy to say we have the best way of doing things, and not understand that that's exactly what we are saying. Or when we do things, even when we feign humility, there is that kind of structure. Or, oh no, it is better here. I've had friends who say, what's going on with these crazy Americans? Don't they know that you need to wash your car every day? What's wrong with them? They're dirty. They should wash their cars every day. Why do they park so close to the street? On the flip side, you see, in Korea, you see, why don't these people do this way? In the US, we would have done it this way or done it that way. Over the years, I've learned to chuckle a little bit and then say, let's interrupt that behavior right now, because what's going on is you're trying to make this experience conform to something you think you already know and something you believe is already right. But right here might not be your right, number one, and there might not be yours. So we need to calm down a little bit and see what else lies beneath that surface, and scratch a little bit, and you'll see that we are more alike than different. And that one, I'll tell you, being the Black man I am with an accent, having been to like Vietnam, Cambodia, these different places where you wouldn't expect to find a Ugandan, and seeing how people behave and how they are kind, and how even when you don't speak a language, you can get along and you can laugh at things because you say, that is humorous, but you don't speak the same language, right? So what I'm bringing up here is a kind of a confining system that just serves to constrain you as an individual, but also serves to constrain others. But the real point that I want to push here is that sense of a kind of self-sabotage. And it's a trick. You're fooling yourself, say, oh, I come from a more superior place. Oh, we wouldn't do that where I come from. We wouldn't do this. Wait, what are you really saying? We, who is this we you are talking about? You have to make, lead with the values first. They will never lead you astray. So lead with the love, lead with the kindness, lead with the understanding, lead with empathy, with humility, no matter what. Will you trip up? Absolutely. And I know that's not a thing to say in a Quaker audience, but that is it. Will you trip up? Absolutely. You beat yourself up about it? No. Just purpose to keep going and lead with what is within thine heart, with acceptance and with acceptance of thyself, with acceptance of others, and it is possible. We've seen it. We've seen it with refugees. I've worked with refugees before, and before you know it, they are singing, they are dancing. They don't understand. There may be two different tribes or two different ethnic groups don't understand each other, but then there's a situation where they're singing or engaged in theater, because living in a refugee camp can be dispossessing, can be alarming, can be depressing, can lead to so many negative things. But then in that situation, I remember being just a young development worker in a refugee camp and saying, wow, this is incredible. I don't understand the language, but here are two groups, two tribes that in the refugee camp we had to keep separate because they kept fighting each other. And here they were one day singing with each other. And it started with the children. The children started, playing with each other, and play led to sing with each other. And then, parents joined in, grandparents chimed in because they all knew that song in their different languages, but it was the same song. And so that magic somehow started dissolving the tensions, started dissolving the misunderstandings, started dissolving the kinds of constructed negativities and constructed otherness around their beings. And that's just magical. Being in Uganda, of course, anytime you're in Africa, there will always be a conversation around colonialism and all this. And right now, Uganda is hosting more refugees than ever before, and has received so many global awards for having a welcoming program for migrants. But then there is a group that says, wait, all these awards we are getting for hosting refugees, are they really awards in good faith, or are they awards for being naive? And that is, of course, the cynical side of things. Why? Because if you go back to colonialism, all the oppression and all, and the existing legacies, we know these African boundaries are not ours. These were imposed boundaries. So why would I have an issue with the South Sudanese coming to where I come from in Arua? It's just a few miles across this artificial border. Why would I have an issue with the Congolese fleeing, conflict in Eastern Congo? There's no issue because that is me, and they are me, and I am them. Why not? And so all this stuff that we talk about, it's not only in the US, it's even in a small country like Uganda going on, existing tensions, and those who are fanning them up, again, usually for their own benefit, but good for some reason, good always in the long run, good always surfaces, and it humanizes, and it also unmasks all these things and makes, I think, the world a much better place. And I mean that from the practitioner's side and from the things that I've seen, experienced firsthand with humans overcoming historical tensions, historical divides, to reach out each other and form that level of understanding. Difficult? Yes. Shall we see these things again? Probably. Do we want to see them? No, because we'd rather not be warring all the time. So that is now the second aspect that I wanted to pull out, this unmasking aspect and the continuous learning aspect of however steeped you are in knowing the diversity, knowing the equity, knowing the inclusion, knowing a sense of belonging, however steeped you are in any of those theories or even the practices, the lived experiences, there is always room to grow, room to learn. Why? That is, as we are human beings, infinite and finite at the same time. And so the exploration continues. Why not have fun, going deeper and deeper? Because the more you open yourself up to learning, I hold that belief, the more you hold yourself to learning, the more humble you will be, and the more you will actually find life refreshing on a daily basis. Even if you feel like you are doing the same routine over and over again, there is always something different that you discover. The third thing is to end on a couple of questions that I've had in my mind and in my heart for a little while now, is to say, number one, how do I know when I am doing enough or when I'm doing too little? And where I've settled on that one is that if you have time to ask that question, you have to times to do some more. And so do some more, and then you'll see where you go from there. And then there is a point where you end. I was at a funeral memorial service in Wilmington, Ohio, and this is for someone that I had never met. Starbucks Tookie, and the people, the way they spoke about her, I said, "Oh my gosh, this is a person that touched so many lives in many simple ways. How did she manage to do that?" And it was just in one act of kindness after another that she didn't pay attention to necessarily, that she didn't keep stock of, that she didn't hold over anyone's head, just bits and pieces. So really for that humanity to come out, the grandiose acts. Grandiose acts are not necessary. Once in a while, maybe if there are big sweeps that have to be made, fine, but those simple things, small things. And that's the thing I always tell our sons, that it's in the simple things, in the greeting, it's in the thank you, it is in the watching someone struggle, carry something, and you help the person. It is in realizing someone might not be in a good mood, and you say, "Oh, look, here I am. Let me give you a hug. You don't have to tell me what you're going through, but here is a hug." It's in realizing that you yourself sometimes are struggling and coming out and saying it to those you love instead of suffering alone, saying, "This is what's going on, and I really do need some help." Why? Because those who love us do actually want to help. Keep them outside, there is no sense of interaction or justice there. And so that's that part of that question that I've come to right now. And then there's the other question. Another question around this issue of belonging, right? So if you are going to put at your core, at that center, beneath what, the surface, a sense of love, a kindness, understanding, how exactly are you going to make sure that, even if you take away any signs of overt othering or of people you see as different, take them away, you're welcoming, how will you know that there is not such a thing as a ambient belonging or certain signs, micro signs that you want to other someone else? How do you catch yourself when you are othering in those ambient ways, those latent ways that many times sneak past us, right? There's a whole school of thought on microaggressions and all. That's not exactly what I'm talking about, but things like the signs we put up, okay, in our offices, signs that we put up on our houses, we put up on our cars. There's a kind of ambient belonging there, and latent belonging and latent aggressiveness that I've been wondering about. At what point do you start saying that I am actually trying to differentiate here or trying to stand up for something, but I'm othering in the process? So that for that question hasn't yet been resolved fully for me, because as you see, I like to wear lots of color. That's part of me. That I know that there are some people who will see me with that lots of color and say, that's not, no, that guy is intense. Don't want to deal with him. He's something, okay? There's a label there. And so that has created a sense of ambient othering that just stay away from me. So that is that final question that I have that I'm thinking about right now, and we will see where it goes from there. On that point, I will stop here through the silence, pause a little bit, and end on just a couple of lines that started making sense to me when we were in primary school. Vivian, my wife, and I, when we were in primary school, we always at assembly at our school in Kampala, we had to, our headmaster always got us to recite Saint Francis of Assisi's prayer, and it did make sense then. It didn't make sense for decades. It started emerging about 2 months ago in that sense of, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is darkness, let there be light. Those are the two lines. That's just starting, and I would love to end there for now. We can settle in silence, and then we can take some questions and comments and explore together. So, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there's darkness, let there be light. Do friends have any questions or comments as we explore together?
I removed the spotlight. You can click on the gallery view if you want to get back all the small screens. You have to go in the upper right of your Zoom screen and click on the grid.
Thank you, Bill. Susan, I see your hand up. Susan, and then Nancy and David.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm wondering if you have a story about the way that these ideas play out in the day-to-day life there at Olney with teachers and students, like some way that it manifests, or even if you have a story about the way that it worked in some other position that you had. I'd love to hear about that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Susan. When I was talking with the program committee, it became clear that we're not going to focus on Olney Friends School, but I'm certainly willing to tell stories about Olney, and I will do so now with these ideas. I talked a little bit yesterday afternoon about one of our students from Afghanistan who had to go to Islamabad to pick up her visa and kept talking, and she was rejected the first time, emailed me. In this time, I was acting as a director of admissions as well as head of school, and we kept going back and forth, and together with Batia in the admissions office, who was an admissions counselor then, worked with the student, and she showed up to Olney eventually, just going through, went to Islamabad, went back to Kabul. 2 days later, Kabul fell. We thought she wouldn't be able to make it, but somehow she got the airport in Kabul, got on a plane to Germany. The Germans sent her to Switzerland. Then eventually the Swiss forwarded her to us, and she arrived. She was scared. She didn't know what to do. With Olney, she was in a rural area, and here were all these people. They were Americans, they were white people, brown people, people of all stripes, smiling and all, but she didn't know, how do I make sense of where I am now? How do I, as a girl from Afghanistan, go play soccer? How do I, as a girl, sit down with boys who are not my family members and eat lunch or dinner and play around and do all these chores, sweeping and all? It took a while for her to just kind of find her place. And very early on with the faculty, we said we cannot impose our thoughts of what conflict means to her, or our thoughts of what being a woman in Afghanistan means on her. We need to let her tell us, and we need to let her give us space to express herself. So that now that space, she's transplanted over to Barnesville, Ohio. We don't give a space for some new roots to grow there. And surely over time, she became open, she became confident. We discussed different books in classes. She made friends. She realized that as much as we're Quaker school, if she wanted to fast during Ramadan, we would make it happen for her. And chef wouldn't, would make a menu for her and make meals for her at those given times she needed to accommodate her faith. And it's amazing. No one really batted an eye and said, well, that's as it should be. Wonderful. And we kept on moving. And to me, well, in my day-to-day, doing administrative stuff, teaching, all that, sometimes I lose sight of those things. But when I stepped back to think about this student's story in the space of 9 months and what had happened not just with her, but with other students, other faculty, and the whole community, and just that it had brought us closer together without us having to label things, without us having to have workshops on inclusion, workshops on understanding other religions. Somehow in those connections, the cleaning together, eating together, doing class together, washing together twice a day, in discussing difficult issues in our classrooms openly, and also saying, oh, I may be the teacher, but I think I was wrong here. Those kinds of things will elicit the best out of a human being. Without any of those other scaffoldings you put in place, for me, when I step back, I say that is allowing that the inner to come forth, and providing that condition again for those new roots to grow, get nourished, and see what happens to you. So that at Olney plays out in that one example. And we see it as well in a difficult question that I'm asked many times. What's the right fit? What's the right fit student for Olney? And the answer is simple. We will know when we see that student. Because we have people who come from different nations. They bring different things to the community. But when you see a student say, yes, this student, yeah, this is the right, this is a student for Olney, there's that reinforcing sense. There are students we've seen brought by their parents who do not want to go to boarding school. And after 30 minutes with other students, current students, they say, I want to be here. This is where I want to be, because I've recognized myself in that other person. But that other person might have blue hair. and maybe some ripped jeans and sneakers, and this person is on the outside very different, but they've seen themselves in that other person. So that's how these things play out at Olney Friends School. I mean, I have so many stories to tell you about Olney. In my time as a UN official, going to different countries trying to negotiate vaccine packages and all, one of the, call it a high level experience I had was walking into the Vatican with my CEO and talking with, high up Monsignor, and it took 15 minutes. He said, well, look, HPV vaccine, we know that people think HPV vaccine is going to make, is going to promote promiscuity, but that is not the Vatican's position. And we're going to give you $100 million to pilot the vaccine. It shattered my world, because I always thought, we're going to see Catholics about an HPV vaccine. Are we playing with ourselves? But no, there was that level of understanding that came through in just in a phenomenal way in a few minutes. On the other side, being in Cambodia, and just and this is now the time for fun. And people who know me know there are always moments for levity, because life is worthwhile when you have time to laugh and smile and enjoy the lighter moments. So in Cambodia, out there, and again, don't understand what's going on or the language. Someone says, I played something from your country. And I didn't play something from my country. I played something from Nigeria. And with anything, goes through that, teach us how to dance. Let's dance, let's do this, let's tie things around ourselves. And for me, that again is these principles in practice on a small scale, but day to day, people just say, okay, you are here. What can I learn from you? What can you learn from us? And so I hope that answers part of your question, Susan. And we move on to Nancy and David. I believe you are the next one.
Thank you. I'm sorry we're a little slow here. I'm so glad to hear your stories from Olney. I've never been there during the term, but I have been present at a number of workshops hosted by Olney Friends School, particularly those that were facilitated by Ken Jacobson and his late dear wife, Catherine. I am aware that the sponsoring yearly meeting, Ohio, is conservative in the sense of conserving the earliest Quaker traditions and sensibilities about their connection with the living Christ, and not avoiding the Christian language. Recognizing that your students come from a number of different religious and ethnic and perhaps non-religious traditions, how do you speak about the divine presence in a way that establishes and recognizes common ground?
Thank you very much for that question. And I'll tell you what, I stay in the classroom, I teach year-round, and in my classes, without a doubt, there will be one or two quote-unquote religious texts. But every other text will be what you can refer to as a spiritual text, because it certainly will challenge you to think about, again, that inner landscape, what lies within. And so we talk about Jesus Christ and God in those terms, latent terms, and we also talk about what do you call God? How does God manifest in your life? Or what do you not call God? Why are you an atheist? Things like that. So that's how we talk about it in a very non-judgmental way, but also making, of course, clear as far as that conservative stance that we don't shy away from talking about Christ, we don't shy away from talking about belief in God. Certainly, I talk about it with my students and the others too. What I have found though with the teenagers is it is not in talking about God or Christ or what. That's not what turns them off. What turns them off is in all, if you are trying to throw rules down, these are divine rules, all this stuff, and you're doing something that they think doesn't match up with what you're saying. That's part one. The other part is those students who do have no problem talking about spirituality or being spiritual until you label it with anything, Allah, God, Jesus, what? But when you go down to it and you talk about spirituality, they are right with you there and then. And it's a part of our interviews. We ask people of all faiths, we ask them how they feel about coming to a school established by a conservative yearly meeting. Of course, now we've been separated from the yearly meeting since the late 90s, but that doesn't mean we are not connected to them anymore, or that we shy away from those historical, philosophical, and spiritual roots at all. So we open it all up and see what happens. And most times when I've found when folks worry, oh, this is going to be a very touchy issue to talk about, say, try it. Let's talk about it and see what happens. And those things that we worry about the most usually go by like, oh, yeah, we understand that already. We've talked about why he's making such a big deal out of it. So turns out the faculty, we're making a big deal out of it, and the students have already thought about it through their TikToks, through their Instagram posts. They've already experienced, they've seen these things, they've talked about them in the dorm and are raring to go. And that gives me hope, is that things that seem so superfluous like that, those labels, these students are ready to move along. Period. That's how we approach those things. It's an exciting time to be a head of school at a Quaker school that continues to practice the testimonies day in and day out. Susan, I was actually just about to call on you, Susan, say, Susan, is there anything I missed that you wanted me to touch on? We've been talking with Susan, emails, interview, all these things. I've never met Susan, but I feel like I know her, somewhat right now. Susan, over to you.
Thank you. I was very interested in your mentioning fairly briefly in your talk the concept of signs on our cars and houses and so on serving as othering. And I'd be very interested to hear you expand on that a little bit and help us think about that. So
yes, the thing about ambient belonging, it's a thing that I've just recently started thinking about and trying to make amends with, and to see, well, how exactly could I make folks welcome? One simple change I made was to alter a bit of the artwork in my office, so that it would, at least in my view, be neutral a little bit, and not just try to put this, black power in people's faces who didn't want do that, or who didn't understand it, or who would be put off, because I'd rather have a conversation than put up a poster on black power, or historical black figures, men, women, who've done amazing things. That's all right, because there is a symbolism there, but it's better to connect with the human being and have those conversations. So it's an ongoing thing for me, Susan, but certainly we've seen it in elections. Someone puts up a sign in their yard, it's ripped out. Someone puts a sign on the car, a sticker and what, and they are labeled something, and you say, wait a minute, I know that person. And the way that you're describing that person, it doesn't really match with my experience of that person. And of course, this entire time, that wonderful, incredible human being that I know has set off some sort of signal that they don't like certain kinds of human beings, which could be farther away from the truth for them. For the people I know, it's happened, and I've had to check in and say, so tell me, I'm hearing these things that well, you're not that person, but correct me if I'm wrong. And it's all right. I just need to know I am not misperceiving something. And before you know it, person put a stick on a car without thinking twice about it. What will be the ramifications of doing that kind of ambient belonging sign or ambient othering sign? So as I said earlier, it is a work in progress for me. It's a fairly new thing in my consciousness right now, but I'll tell you, I see it in almost everything I do, even when I'm writing and I start using certain phrases. I say, wait, that phrase comes from a certain tradition. It comes from my Western studies, my study of ancient Greek. That's where that comes from. That's not going to make sense here, or if it does, it will set off some sort of other signal that I do not want to understand what's going on with this particular individual. So it makes for interesting times. As you probably can tell, I don't like to just sit there, bogged down, sit there on a potentiality. There's always that process. And it's thinking that what I am now is some form of transient being, and trying to get to another level without forcing it, but always trying to make sure I'm not getting myself stuck and getting myself closed off to experiences, closed off from other minds, closed off from other hearts. So we just keep going. That's as far as I can expound on that one, Susan.
Jeff
Who is
Brieger
this?
Jeff Brieger, I think, maybe wants to say something.
Oh, yes, please.
You're on mute.
You're muted, Jeff.
I got.
There you go. There you go.
Yes, I find your views on oneness and its source absolutely wonderful, and yet I have a question for you. Here in Michigan, particularly, when we first came, there was a radio station called the Station of the Nations, which broadcast in 20 different languages. And I know that this is the home of many immigrants. And they have found that the otherness has been beneficial in terms of survival. And I wonder if you could speak to that too. In other words, there is another side to the otherness that we also have to recognize, and that is the side where the otherness helps to support community and ultimately survival.
Yes. So the way I understand that otherness, put in this way, is understanding our strength in diversity, correct? Yes. And our strength in the multiplicity of those voices I spoke about otherwise. Absolutely, that is true, as long as for sure the diversity is celebrated and not used as a kind of pin, a kind of checkbox. Oh yes, we have these many brown people here, these languages, but on the end of it, here we speak English. Here we do these American traditions or these Ugandan traditions, right?
Of course.
Use that something as a source of strength, as a source of deeper connections, and as a source of more texture. Okay, the more texture, great tapestry. Why not? I see that. So the way I was talking about that othering is in the othering that subjugates, the othering that holds back, the othering that refuses to free, or in other words, the othering that refuses to love. That's how I was talking about. But these other things, I mean, in which place would you think of a Ugandan Black non-Quaker leading a Quaker school? Probably these kinds of things, they don't just happen. There are communities that are trying to get them to happen, and it's not just Olney, and it's not just in the US, it's not just in you, it's all over the place where you hear these stories, and that's where I get that sense of hope that these are not isolated incidences where people say, yes, you may not have all these labels, but guess what? You are us, and we are you, and we are going to support each other through that diversity all over the world.
Yes, thank you.
Bill?
Yes, please. You said that you weren't worried about being a specialist. Well, you knew that it was something to think about, but that you were more of a generalist in life. But I think you might be a specialist in love. I think you might be honing in on some of these concepts. I did have a question. In your metaphor of the tree, you described how roots can be nourishing, but they can also cause damage. They can also disrupt and break through. And I wondered if you could give us some more ideas about how certain roots may be more trouble than we would like.
Right. Well, you know what, Bill, I'll respond the first part with the thing about love. And I've come to realize that when you start thinking of your story, some things start making sense that seemed like an accident. So I'll go back. My maternal grandfather, who was a reverend in the Anglican church, and also my paternal grandfather was a reverend canon. But my maternal grandfather always, I grew up in that household, and always, it was almost every night where we had to read the passage on love in the Bible, almost every night without fail. And of course, the grandchildren, we always thought, here we go again, granddad and grandma are going to make us sing this hymn, and then they're going to get one of us to read the passage in the Bible. And then later on, when I got to realize, what's your middle name? My middle name is Njagala, which in my maternal language, in my mother's language, means I love. And my mother was named Kwagala, and Kwagala itself is just love, period. And my sister was also named Kwagala after Vagala. Vagala is they love. And so it just kept going on and on there. So that connection has come out clearly, say, well, what is with this love thing? Is it too hard to lead with love, even when there are difficult situations you have to work through? So yes, on the tree things, I have not been an expert in trees at all. I did a little bit of reading. As far as the destruction there, I think sometimes if you thinking of the trees you're planting, you give them the space to grow. That's part of what I understand. You know which species, you know what they need, you give them the space to grow. But if you don't know, then there you will have to come into a dynamic conversation of which one is going to, which one do you want to maintain? You want to maintain that the roots, you want to maintain going into your buildings or going into a road? Do you want to maintain something that may be dying or maybe not dying? And we've had this conversation at Olney. I'm glad to see one of my trustees, Dottie Churchwell, on this Zoom, because anytime someone talks about cutting down a tree or a shrub or anything, I have to ask Dottie, is that okay? Because she understands those things with trees and shrubs. And recently there's some, she said, yes, that's okay, because that tree is going to fall down one day. It's already dying. It's going to break down the door So it's time for it, and that's that. And for me, that's where I get that assurance from people I know who really care. So we now in that physical world who really care about the trees and know about them, and their expert advice now serves to guide me. Now into that metaphorical world, I think there is a time for seeking out certain experts too, people who are known for embracing some spiritual practices, where you see, am I suffocating other people in trying to grow out so much as far as I can? Am I being selfish? What can I do to keep myself in? Or am I being encumbered from growing? What can I do to grow more? Or did we put this obstacle in the place of someone's growth? What can we do that could actually serve as a mutual benefit to all of us? On those things, it's good. Then there is expertise out there. There is certainly a way, which I've also come to believe in so much. When I was young, I would say this is what's going on with the Quakers. Say, way will open. Now, more and more, that comes back to me say, this one's a bit tough, and there is no clear right or wrong. Way will open. Let's sleep on it for a day or two, and most times, that day or two serves as a great lifter of the mist and the fog in the mind, and there is some level of clearness, and that's that for me. Again, gives me hope as a non-specialist in the issues of the roots.
Thank you.
Nancy, it's good to see you, Nancy.
It's good to see you, Christian. And I wanted to speak as a 60 years ago student going to Olney. I had 3 years there, wonderful years. And one of the things I learned, and I'm sure the students are still learning, is some self-confidence in a lot of ways. So I'm thinking about growing students. You grow human beings as your students. We as students were put in charge of cooking for the school once a week. This was my home ec class, which I thought was a wonderful class. And it gave me confidence about cooking for big groups of people. Wonderful stuff. Being in contact with the animals was really great. I felt comfortable with the animals, comfortable with a farm. Besides learning a lot in our classrooms of the academic subjects. So I'm really pleased to see that Olney is emphasizing the growing of food for the school, and that the students participate in that so much. And you might want to say just a little bit more about that this farm to table aspect at Olney that I think is just wonderful. I'm glad it's still happening, but I thought maybe you'd say a little bit about that way of growing. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, Nancy. I'm happy to say a few things about the farm table kitchen classroom. Actually, that's the integration mode that we're using now at Olney, and we are grateful for those who started it. I spoke a little bit about this aspect yesterday evening on the panel of Quaker organizations, but I'll say a few things. So with the farm, and it's growing more and more now, we try our best to use whatever we grow and whatever the animals produce. And somehow the best person who could come at that time showed up to come and manage the kitchen, and that was a missing link, because Don Gwindon and Casey would produce all this food and it wouldn't be used in the kitchen. Now you have this wonderful professional chef who cares only about farm to table and organic produce, and he will scrap his menus to make sure that he uses whatever the farm has available on that day. And what the farm has available on that day, as you said, Nancy, the students have taken part in putting their fingers in the dirt and digging things and caring for things. And that's the part I love, that they don't just plant things, leave them there. They have to care for them continuously and see the entire life cycle from seed to harvest, then onto their plates. All right. They also take care of those animals. They take part in the kidding season every April with the goats. They see them. So then when we make the goat, they know exactly, many times they know exactly which goat we are having. So those who are so attached to the goats and love them, so we don't tell them so much about when that goat will be served or when that cow will be served, but we know that our students can tell the difference between only produce, only animal products, and what is store-bought. I mean, it's uncanny that they can tell it, because part of it, they own it, because they've partaken in making it come to life. That is just an incredible thing for us, and we know it's good to have people who know that tomatoes come from the ground and not from the supermarket. You'll find many people who don't know that right now. But these are students who do know that aspect. And then we are making the farm an integral part of our curriculum as well. Trying to do this transdisciplinary curriculum where we try to address questions that go above disciplines. And that is really to challenge the students, elicit the students to think beyond those textbooks, use that farm as their lab, use the experiences in the woods as their lab, just to take notice of what's going on, be more aware, being more in tune of what's going on with your body and what's going on the inside as well. And we tie that to the spiritual aspect of the school when we sit in silence twice a day. And now we do sit in silence twice a day with no notes, no books, no sketch pads, no nothing, to be together. And this past year was incredible because the students didn't object, they didn't fight it. They said, okay, you told us we came to a Quaker school, this is part of it, we are going to do it. And it's amazing to me when it is the students saying, we really don't need any distractions when we are in worship. We really don't need people coming in, walking loudly. We really don't need people sketching and all that. That when it is led by the students, that's a real feedback, real leading indicator that we are doing what is good for them, and they're also learning to take charge of their lives. All that integration always comes back, of course, as a head of school, it comes back to haunt me, because if there's a decision made and the students say it doesn't match up with what we believe in and what the school stands for, all those questions are forwarded to me, and they speak with me, and it's at once a bit disconcerting and also incredible to see the students say, no, we need to actually lead with these values. And most times it's the students who do not want to follow any of the rules. They're ones who are saying, no, this is not who we are, Christian. It's not the right decision. Please revisit it. And these are the merits. That's refreshing, because those are now becoming free thinkers, people with open hearts, and people who are ready to stand up and be counted when things are not going right. Lynn?
Yes, I'm quite interested in the ambient signs of belonging that you've mentioned, and the fact that we may be deaf or blind to them. And I attend an unprogrammed meeting where the physical surroundings are kept quite simple, and there is not artwork in the lobby or in the meeting room. And yet I think there are certainly ways in which we probably signal belonging, maybe more verbal than visual. And I wondered if you could speak a bit about that and what that, how that shows up.
Well, on this one, I'll just put it in the office sense and say, let's say we are trying recently at Olney, we're trying to hire some teachers, and one came on campus and just connected the dots with the things we said, and also with the little bits of artwork left over from the school year. We had taken most of it down. She connected it, and when we were interviewing, she brought up this thing. She said, well, sometimes people don't want to talk about integrating knowledge or integrating ways of understanding, but in the things that you've said so far, and the little bit I saw on your walls, it seems like Olney is trying to integrate these different knowledge streams, integrate ways of understanding that may not necessarily lend themselves to simple understanding, like a cursory kind of surface level. Let's just integrate and call it a day. And without us telling her the words, she knew that we were struggling with implementing our transdisciplinary curriculum. And we had tried the different ways, and we had done well in some of the modules, but we were still not where we wanted to be. And in that instant, we had put out some signals without knowing it, in just simple conversation, meet and greet, and a couple of questions here and there, and then what she saw on the walls. And look at what happened. She came to interview for one job and got another job as our curriculum coordinator to help us transition fully to that vision that we had of this integrated transdisciplinary curriculum. And look at how that happens, that we came to an understanding through those cues, the simple cues that we didn't even know that we had left around or that we were setting out. So that was a positive outcome for us. And as you know, she told me in our onboarding session yesterday, she said, this is the job I've always wanted. This is what I went to graduate school to study, this integration. And I hadn't put my finger on it, but I've been bored doing the same thing for these many years where I've been. And so finally, I've put a finger on, this is exactly, I know what I did for my master's thesis. I don't know why I had never ever thought that it could be practiced on a full scale, a school-wide scale. And so that's there, that signal, the ambient belonging. And when we were interviewing this, our new colleague, after that, I said to everyone, I said, yeah, guess what? I really like this. I really like this candidate. Not only is she qualified, not only does she have experience, she's a bit weird, just like us, in a different way, but also a little bit weird. And that again is a signal of belonging that I think she picked up from us. We all were a little bit quirky here and there. And again, that's the fun in life. I hope I've started to answer that question, Lena. As I said earlier, this is a work in progress for me. This ambient belonging, I just recently started observing it and thinking about it, and trying to create, those communities that really say, oh, please come. You may see this one thing, but here we are. You can actually be here in words. Sometimes these other words that we say, actually, they do mean a lot. And other times, the things we put on our walls or don't put on our walls also signal many things. So an example, you could want to have a workforce, say more Latino women in a computer, an IT firm. But then when they come to interview the Latino women, they find all sorts of gadgets that they cannot relate to. As qualified as they are, that doesn't signal belonging. They don't belong there, and they'll go away somewhere else. So that's as far as I've reached with that one, Lynn.
Thank you. Each story of yours helps.
I think we have just a few more minutes if there are one or two more questions or comments that friends have?
Hillary?
I am the LEYM rep to Olney, and I just want to say how proud I am that over the years, since I attended this school a long time ago and was a member also of LEYM at the same time, how proud I am of our support for this wonderful small school. And I just want to thank the yearly meeting for our continued support, and not just financial, but in so many other ways. It's very important, and I'm just saying thank you.
Absolutely. We are so grateful. And that's why I said that's one of the things was so easy to say, absolutely, let's do it. So thank you very much. I hope we grow stronger together, and that it's not a one-sided thing that's Lake Erie meeting, please support us. If there are ways that we can also support you, just please let us know, because that is what comes in a partnership. A real partnership. If you are always begging, there is a power asymmetry there already that makes it not a partnership. So grateful and ready for any future partnership building programs, projects, even if it's a simple call here and there. Those things go a long way. Erica?
Hi, I just am a kind of a city girl. I was just curious, who butchers the meat for you?
We do the meat that we that we put out in the kitchen for students. We have some local butcheries that do that for us because they go through all the state inspections. But then there's meat that we eat over the summer as faculty, and we butcher that meat ourselves.
Thank you.
Anyone else who has another thought or comment? I guess I will just say we very, very much appreciate your sharing your wisdom and your love and your insights with us. We've learned a lot about both the school and things to think about in our whole roots and tree metaphor, which we've seen can be very, very complex and mean many different things. So
Yes.
we thank you very much. And
happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was touching at the beginning. It's been an incredible day. It's been an outpouring of love today. I don't know why. This birthday, I have not had this kind of outpouring of love in years. But friends from all corners of the world have sent in stories, done all sorts of things. So I do feel I feel so I feel loved and cherished and honored, and that's what I want to put out in the world as well. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to interface with you. And one day when it's physical again, I hope to show up, this time not as a keynote speaker, as a participant in the annual sessions there at the Lake Erie yearly meeting. Thank you very, very much. I'm grateful from me to you where you are. Lots of love and holding everyone the light through joys, triumphs, tough times. And the world is definitely going to be a good place. We keep the hope, and there are pockets of just positive things going on. We keep the hope.
Thank you. And I will remind friends that one of the workshops tomorrow is one that will be given by Christian, along with several other fascinating possibilities. So we'll look forward to seeing everyone tomorrow.